All right, so good afternoon, folks. Hi to you who've joined us live, and to those who are watching this on YouTube, hello, and welcome to the closing panel discussion for this year's BIM Harambee online conference. It's been quite a jam-packed week. At the beginning of this week, Kehinde and I promised you that it would be jam-packed, that it would be full of very interesting content, and I believe that that has been the case. Looking back at this week, we've had panel discussions, we've had experts presenting on various different technical topics, we've had updates from around the continent, and this has truly been an example of how Africa can come together to share the best of what we know in the interests of growing the adoption of BIM in our engineering and architectural and construction practices. And I believe that this has been a fantastic week. So this afternoon, we're going to be having our closing panel discussion. And really today is about looking back at the week and then looking ahead and sharing some reflections. So I am joined this afternoon by a wonderful group of professionals from various different parts of the industry. And you can see them on screen: Giles, Ane, Kehinde, and Moses. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off with the conversation. So Giles, if you could share monitor and kick us off.
Thanks, Richard. I'm Giles Pendleton. I am both the chairman of the Green Building Council of South Africa and also the Chief Development Officer of Oct, who are the developers, the master developers of the Waterfall Precinct in Johannesburg, between Joburg and Pretoria. And we are part of we're a listed property fund.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm a professional registered architect and BIM coordinator at Moderna AC, where we work on increasing efficiency for our clients using BIM. Where we also are part of research and training and implementation.
Kehinde.
Hello, everyone. Nice to have you here. I'm Kehinde Adeyemi, Executive Director for KD Prime Group. We practice in Nigeria, civil and structural engineering. We are also BIM practitioners, so we see how to implement BIM on our projects and ensure we drive on value for our clients. Thank you.
My name is Moses, the Executive Director of BIM Africa Initiative. We're a civil society organization that is focused on advocating the adoption of digital technologies across the built environment in the continent. And we are collaborating with the BIM Community Africa on this event. It's nice to have you and welcome.
Thank you very much. And I'm Richard Matchett. I'm a civil engineer, and I work in South Africa and Greater Africa and Middle East for a company called Zutari. And I am specifically involved with our transformation as a company. I'm also involved with the BIM Community Africa, working together with colleagues from across the industry. And so really, it's a highlight this year to be part of this conference and to talk about this very important issue of how do we basically make the tide rise. How do we create opportunity by our interactions in this community and in the various different communities of practice that we are around the continent to use BIM effectively, to create that awareness and to drive this as a new tool set that really promises to add so much benefit to our industry and to the built environment. So to kick us off, I wanted to really just have a round robin in the conversation and say, what are some of the highlights of this past week, whether it was a panel discussion, something that stood out for you, a presentation. Let's have some of the highlights that really sort of struck a chord with you and that you would like to just bring to this panel discussion. And I'm going to ask Giles if you wouldn't mind kicking off the discussion with your reflections.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I think I wasn't involved in a lot this week. I must be honest. I was part of the original sessions and the judging on the competition. I think just reflecting on that, I think we've got quite a long way to go with BIM and the adoption of BIM as a sort of a primary tool. It seems to be a luxury rather than the primary sort of application for design. My background, 15 years in the Middle East, I've seen BIM being used correctly. I can see where we can go as a continent with the adoption of this way of thinking. And it moves beyond just clash detection to be something that's actually, the architect who starts it actually ends up, that model ends up in the hands of the owner at the end. I mean, I come from an owner's perspective. I think the adoption of digitalization of our assets is far behind where we need to be. We're still relying on 2D drawings. We think CAD is the way to go, which is fine for your asset managers and your facilities managers. But I think overall, this is a fantastic forum to start actually getting the community now to start driving this conversation further, and it has to be adopted through the various regulatory bodies and property associations, SAPOA, Green Building Council, etc. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but it's opened my eyes from a chairman perspective of GBCSA that we need to do a lot more.
Absolutely. Moses, maybe some reflections from your side, things that really stood out from the week.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of engagement during the week in scanning through all of the content, reviewing the presentations, the various panel sessions, in fact, even the report from the state competition. And I think that one of the highlights was the conference, even this morning, where we had various people tune in to present and share their ideas on ways forward and how the industry can move forward. I think that the important part of the various conversation is that, yes, we all understand that we have some steps to take in ensuring that our industry can grow. And so now we begin to look at various strategies that we can deploy. A lot of people have identified issues like the gap in the educational system, the need to drive clients' interaction and interest in the digital technologies, the need to sensitize the regulatory bodies, and a lot of other ideas. So yes, there's been quite interesting thoughts and ideas that has been shared during the week, and perhaps just to begin to see how we can then move forward and begin to put many of these strategies into action.
And you work a lot in the education space and in helping companies to figure out how to use them. What have been some of your observations and maybe thoughts on what Moses just said about that skills gap, the opportunity for growth, etc.? What were some of the things that have stood out for you?
Richard, I reviewed quite a few of the conversations that was happening this week, and I'm excited. I'm truly excited where we are going. I think I especially appreciated the presentation from Katoor Jeddah, where she was actually demonstrating how they are doing like a medium-sized project, or even Kainda Ayobade's big data analytics workshops. And I agree with you, Moses. We're definitely on the right track. And that excites me. It excites me to see other professionals in the industry on the Sarambi talking to each other, sharing ideas, and seeing how can we get where we want to be at 2030. Because we're starting with the end in mind, we can figure out different ways and means to get there. And Richard, that excites me. Yeah, if that answers your question.
It does, absolutely. Kehinde, your reflections on the week. I'm thinking back at the anticipation that you and I had, when we were thinking about what's all jam-packed into this week, and keen to hear your reflections now that we've come the journey, we've seen the content. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, very well. For me, it's been a very exciting week. Really, it's been packed. Every day I had to really anticipate and look forward to the presentations for the day, and have not been disappointed. I'd like to highlight that for me, one of the key areas that really got me very interested, and that really highlighted the need and a lot of what we need to do, has to do with the digitalization of practice. I mean, it's very clear that there's a need to improve on how we do things now, and digital is a very key aspect. I'd like to touch again on certain presentations. For example, Kehinde, the way he introduced analytics into practice. I mean, that was very, very crucial, and it just helps. It just helps the built industry professionals now to understand that, look, if we are going to really get ahead of practice, of ourselves in practice, of course, and also being able to deliver top-notch value to our clients, then we need to harness data, improve on digital. And of course, I was very excited about the student competition. It's very important that we see that we can demonstrate this value. I mean, we've been talking around being able to demonstrate value for BIM adoption. BIM adoption usually will be the rate, we might see an increased rate of adoption if practitioners, clients, end users are able to relate with the value, the end value they get. And so when we see these students, and I say students because I mean, these are not, of course, they could be professionals, but I love the fact that these were students that dedicated time, resources, got help, and were able to demonstrate some of these values. And so for me, that makes a lot of sense, and it just sent a lot of message to the wider team out there that, I mean, BIM is the way to go. We have a lot to do, right? But one step at a time, and we certainly will get there.
Giles, I think you've seen the good, bad, and the ugly of BIM. And maybe from your perspective, and just building on what Kehinde was saying, and Ane, of the opportunities and the benefits that we see, how would you frame some of the opportunities for growth of BIM, and some of the things that the industry needs to consider? You know, we're not just growing for the sake of growing BIM, but what are some of the key elements of growth, and what are some of the opportunities? What are some of the drivers that you see to really increase the adoption of BIM from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I come from the built environment, so for me, I'm from the client side. So we are the people who order a building. It's very simple language. We order a building, we have someone produce it, and then we take it and we commercialize it. I think until us as the clients start driving the conversation around BIM and the need for BIM, and then once we have once we have a building, it's not necessarily us from a development perspective. It's asset management, property management, facilities management, etc. They are not seeing the upside of BIM yet, and so I think you got to go to the client, and then to the clients 1 or 2 tiers down. So if your facilities managers and your property managers see the upside of it, then they will drive it through the asset management business. That will drive it through the development business, because so they are our client. The asset management business is our client, and then we will then drive it down through the chain through our consultants. But I think it's very difficult for the consultants to push a BIM agenda. They're selling BIM, but no one's buying. If your client's not buying, and he doesn't see the benefit, to him, good old-fashioned PDFs are easy. 2D, even 2D in CAD, you don't see. We keep it on our servers, all our drawings, all our as-builts. But the guys will always revert from a property management perspective to the PDFs. So part of our mandate to our consultants to produce as-built packs is both CAD and PDF. And we'll never open the CAD in 10 years on a building. It's bizarre, but so the guys are, I think, from a client side, are not taught the benefit of it. And I think if you can have an integrated BIM model that's at LOD 511, allows a client to be comfortable and confident that everything that's in that model is accurate, the pipe sizing, its locations, etc. Why would we be looking at a drawing? Why would a client now go and open the architecture drawings, look in the mechanical drawings, look in the electrical drawings, when it's all in one drawing, or it's in one model? It's technically a drawing. So yeah, I think the adoption is going to stagnate until the clients mature and understand why the whole world and the whole industry from a design side is moving towards an integrated model. We're just lazy. It's a bottom line, is the client's lazy. I've said it. It's a lot easier to look on PDFs, I can assure you. So yeah, that's the crux for me. And how do we crack that? I don't know. I think you're going to have the pioneers that are going to step forward. They're going to be a lot more digital savvy. But also just to bear in mind, there's very few developers who, I mean, we're one of the few. We're developing on scale in one location. So we've got 500 buildings in one city, and we're building a city. If you can pick on anybody, Growth Point. Growth Points has got 400, 500 buildings, but they're all over the place. They must have 20, 30, 40, 50 buildings in Sandton, but nothing's adjacent. So everything is an island, sort of a design island. Then the question has to be asked is, do we really need to do that? If I'm them, do I really need BIM in that particular location? So it's a conversation that the client has to be having, and they have to have it from an educated perspective from their operational side. The ops drive these conversations. So yeah, that's it from our side, I think.
Moses, you guys are doing a lot of work in your part of the continent in lobbying, in influencing the industry. Tell us about how what you're doing sort of ties in with what Giles has been saying to try and change those mindsets, and what have you found that's been successful, and what are the things that you're driving hardest to get this I guess this essential message across, that it's not just a nice to have, but this is actually the new way of thinking about assets.
Yep. So just like you said, we've involved in a lot of advocacy, in a lot of trying to get people to begin to redefine and make those changes in their practice. Perhaps also even engaging the government. In 2019, we had the panel session where we brought together the people in the government, the people in the regulatory bodies to a table and to discuss. So yeah, a lot of conversation is happening, but the concern is that despite the high level of interest and the high level of effort that we've made, there's quite very little industry change. And so it means that we need to begin to redefine the approach with which we are addressing and trying to move people to adopt this change. So some of the challenges have been that people, the project clients, have not really been brought on board in many of these conversations. And so they've not mandated or enforced that there's the need for the BIM and data technologies to be adopted in their own projects. And so every business person, every construction firm, every design team is much more interested in getting paid and getting to deliver the work than the approach with which they go with it. So those are some of the approaches, that, the challenges that we've identified, and we're hoping that we can begin to find solutions to moving forward. Some other constraints, just like I highlighted in the conference in the morning, was that there seems to be a lack of the required infrastructure in many of the African countries. So take, for example, the event we are currently running. A lot of people have struggled with internet access and getting 24/7 access to electricity and a lot of those basic infrastructures. So if those issues are missing, then it becomes a challenge to begin to collaborate on projects and begin to adopt digital technologies. So yeah, it still boils down to the fact that a lot of work needs to be done. And yes, we as an industry, it seems like everybody is now excited and interested in trying to see that we all work together to achieve the change that we desire.
The BIM in 2030 really relates to smart cities ultimately. And I think that a lot of our governments are starting to talk about smart cities. A lot of some developers, Giles, like you guys, are talking about an actual smart city, and you're starting to deliver it. And there's a bit of a gap there, right? We've got the people dreaming, and we've got the people trying. Ane, from your perspective, and I know that in the work that you're involved with, you're hands-on involved with helping people figure out how to do stuff, and helping them with their skills. Some of the things that you see needing to be tackled, some of the challenges that need to be overcome in actually delivering on these dreams. Maybe some comments on that. What do we need to be ready to tackle so that we can succeed not only in BIM, but also in applying BIM into smart cities? Maybe some reflections from your side.
I think, Richard, we definitely need to look at the integration between BIM and GIS, as some of the presentations during this conference also actually pointed out. And we definitely need to look at training. We need to look at training staff in major corporations, in major companies, and also small companies. And we're going to achieve that through conferences like this Harambee, where people do demonstrations on a public forum, to really, as German Bodenheimer said in one of the discussions, we need to de-learn. And I think a lot of the professionals need to de-learn and relearn by keeping the end in mind, to see how are we going to get where we want to be, and really take creative steps. And we need to be training people who's in the industry, and also at our tertiary levels. We also need to get to those students, so when they get into a company, that they are better equipped to deal with them. So we not only have the bottom down approach of the client, where it's a client requirement, but also, so we have the bottom up and the top down approach. We have it from both sides. And I think with that, we're gonna get to 2030 BIM ready, with our digital twins, with our smart cities, and that's definitely then achievable.
It's a significant journey to get there. I think I, like you, am very positive. That's my nature, and I'm excited about where we can go. But I'm also aware of how big this mountain is. You know, when there's a saying, the devil is in the detail, and so often when one starts diving into the how of these ideas, that's where things, you know, sometimes get unstuck. When we started this whole journey, I think both in BIM Africa and in the BIM Community Africa, the vision was really to create a community. And I want to maybe just have an open discussion. I'm not going to ask people to give turns, but let's have a discussion for a couple of minutes on the value of community and how we can leverage that community. So maybe just to kick us off, one of the things that came out in this morning's conference and has come out in lots of the conversations is how the nature of the industry, because it is a highly competitive, you know, tendering heavy industry, that generally there's a sense that, you know, you've got to keep your cards close to your chest. You've got to, you know, look after number one first, because, you know, we need to pay salaries, etc. And yet there's a sense that competitive, let's call it an environment, the competitive attitude is also breaking down the opportunities to share. And the sense that I'm getting through the community engagements are that when we're able to overcome some of the limitations that competitiveness brings, we're able to share knowledge to the extent that it can improve all of our ability to do this. So amongst us, we've actually got, I think, the right combination, and I really want to hear a balanced view in this conversation, because, you know, Giles, from the client side, yes, obviously, you know, you value the competitiveness, because that's how you're ensuring that you're, you know, getting competitive pricing, and you're also, you know, chasing financial targets. From a project management and control side, you know, we want to make sure that we've got the right controls in place, Moses, to make sure that, you know, our project teams are properly established, etc. That drives cost. But we also want to make sure that we've got the right skills. Kehinde, you know, from an engineering point of view, we got to do things right, you know, and you know, it's not a case of learn on the job, because, you know, we can't make our projects our guinea pigs. I know you're seeing all over the industry where people are trying things, they're contacting Modena up to say, help us. So let's talk about, you know, this idea of community, and how do we maintain this balance of both being competitive, being, you know, involved in a market that demands us to compete for work, and that's good, while at the same time driving a sharing attitude where we can grow together as an industry, so that we can raise the bar, raise the tide on whole. Ane, go for it.
I think an excellent way to achieve just that, Richard, is with competitions. Because if you put out a competition, And obviously the prize needs to be, it needs to, someone would want, the people would want the prize, you know. So maybe we need to do research on what the prizes are for these professional teams to participate. But in my experience, competition is always a wonderful driving factor for getting people together on a competitive way, but also in a collaborative way, because it is a safe way of doing something, and it also drives innovation and creativity in the same sense, and that's what we need to come together, and that's one idea. Richard, I think you're on mute still.
Yes, I was talking to myself. So any other thoughts on the value of community and how we leverage that to get this task done?
So just as was identified on the conference this morning, perhaps we also need to begin to see how we can actualize or maybe itemize what the vision should be for the industry. And then as a community, we then see how we put together our resources towards achieving that vision. So perhaps maybe at the moment we are quite focused on a lot of things, achieving a lot of things. But if we begin to harmonize the communities across the continent and then have one vision. So we've had people make instances of the likes of Singapore, where this is clearly defined what they're hoping to achieve within a set period of time. And so if we have this also in our continent, and we all see how we can contribute resources, put the necessary efforts required to achieve that one goal, that one vision that we set. And I think those are part of the roles that the community can begin to see how they can drive to ensure that we all work towards achieving the BIM goal that we're setting for the year 2030.
Thanks, Moses. Giles, Kehinde, you're up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If I could just quickly come in there. Giles touched on a very sensitive area earlier on, and that has to do with the client, who pays, who get to pay for these services, because right now it seems the practicing professional seems to be the most fascinated and interested in the concept of BIM and such deployment. So my line of thought is that professionals, companies, organizations that deploy BIM can begin to come together to help the client, right? The focus will be to help the client see value in the solution being proposed and probably developments in the future, right? So how do we do this? We can, for example, touching on very basic gains of BIM uses or BIM deployment. You can demonstrate the gains, you can come together as a team, right? At that point, I think there's no competition really. That point where different organizations come together with one goal, and that goal is to help propagate and demonstrate the gains of BIM deployment. They could take a very basic area, for example, clash detection, for example, and working together as a team, in unison, that helps to drive home the message, right, of unity and also a vested interest as a team for the industry, compared to when single companies or organizations try to communicate this, let me use the word, in silos or within their own influence environments to their clients.
Okay, so Kehinde,
yeah.
Are you still there?
Richard, yeah. So look, apart from being the bad guys and as the client, I also think there's another sort of equally naughty party, and that is your contractors. I think at this stage, they are the meat in the sandwich between the design and the client, getting the built asset. Very few contractors, especially in SA, and I think probably less so in Africa, are BIM proficient. They don't have design managers. They don't understand why they're getting their drawings in a model format rather than a set of drawings, because that's how they were taught back at university and on the tools for the last 20 years. So, the contractors we need to get closer to the contractors from a design perspective. So the engineering fraternity and the design fraternity have to educate the contractor that they are part of delivering the solution. And the tool BIM allows them to build faster, build better, build more accurate. but they've got a role to play in that. They have a responsibility to make sure then that the documentation goes through LOD 400 and all the way to 500, giving then the client essentially an as-built model. So I think we always say, like, the clients, if the client's not driving it, but I suppose the client's at the end of the road with the documentation. I think we both need to close in on the contract. We've had very robust discussions with our contractors, main contractors on buildings. I think one of the conversations is with the contract, look, I'm building a 4,500 square meter ground plus 3 office block. It's not that complicated to do. It's a shell and core fit out. So it's a grey box. It's literally like 20 trades. It's not that hard. Do I really need to do that in BIM? And when the contractor is saying, I'd prefer not to build in BIM, it's difficult for me from a tender perspective to force them to build in BIM, and then as a result have it designed in BIM, because it's such a simple structure. So I think that's part, when you talk about community of BIM, who else are role players? Definitely the contractor is something that has to be educated further. They have to start coming on the journey. So if you have your designers, all your designers, from architect through all your services engineers and your structural, civil, etc., even landscaping, everything in a BIM model, your contractor builds in BIM. I think your client is going to get an as-built pack that he now has to work with and accept. That's where the industry is going. So whether you want it or not, I think if we can get the contractors on this side of the equation, it's going to make a big difference. And that's also an education process. They haven't got their heads in the stand and pretend that BIM doesn't exist. it's a big jump for them. So massively, remember, the guys have been designing, they've been working on paper drawings since Moses was, not our Moses, but Moses was around building pyramids. They've worked on drawings. So a builder has been taught that for thousands of years, that a drawing is king, paper drawing. So you've got to break that sort of cycle, that thinking. So yeah, no disrespect to any of the Moseses, by the way.
So I think those are very, very valid points. Last time we spoke, we also spoke about the value that can be added by the professional bodies. We've obviously got professional bodies that represent engineering, cost control and quantity surveying, architecture, and the various different client organizations. Let's think about how lobbying could be affected by talking to those different organizations. And we don't necessarily have trade unions as professionals, but we've got these professional bodies where presentations get made. Maybe Giles, just to continue with you, what are some of the things that you think that us on the call who represent maybe the service providers could partner with the professional bodies of the developers to say, well, how do we bring the different sides of the story together, so that we're not just throwing things over the wall the whole time, but that we're actually engaging.
Richard, I think ESG is going to overtake this whole conversation, and from where I come from, and that is, we've just certified our first net zero building. It was quite a journey for us to understand that. I think one of the things we missed on the way through was the embedded carbon modeling, and now with, we're actually starting to design in 7D. So 7D is your traditional 3D plus embedded carbon modeling, your takeoff model from your QS, your program, your build program, your resourcing. So a resource schedule. So it actually builds a 3D model, and it shows it in time how you actually build it with your cranes and your hook time, etc. It's all programmed into the model. But the most important of that is not necessarily the takeoff, which you can do with your QSs do anyway, but it's the embedded carbon part of that which excites me the most, because at the moment we're designing a building and we get to the end, we get it certified net zero. We actually don't know what it's taken to make it net zero operations, not net zero build. So I think the fact that clients are going to start being forced through their ESG reporting and from property developers, from the understand, this is primarily your funds. So these are your listeds who have listing obligations and have disclosure and reporting obligations, to start disclosing how much carbon I have used to build building A, B, C, and D. And it's a scary number. So I think, and you can't do that in CAD. You can't do it in a 2D design process. It can only be done through a Revit or through a BIM type of process, where you can capture embedded carbon through the database. So, and it's going to start changing the materials consultants start selecting. So if the client says, guys, I want a net zero operational building, and I want, how close can we get to net zero from a build? Everything has an embedded carbon number in it as a material. Every time an architect chooses a particular tile or a whatever, a material, glass, the embedded carbon calculator just starts ticking up and up and up, and it starts getting quite scary. So it's all good and well to say we'll deliver net zero buildings from an operation perspective, but if you mow down 1 million trees to make the building, it's almost counterproductive. You're not actually getting anywhere. You're actually going backwards. So we talk net zero is quite a hard thing to get your head around. But so from my side, I think ESG and the world being more socially aware of the climate change impact and the need to disclose more and build better and there's only one tool that really can pull all of that together. So again, it's another arrow of forcing the buyers of services, being the clients, to have to start using BIM a lot more, whether they want to or not, whether they understand it or not, because that reporting requirements, especially from a listed, is a critical component of our ESG report comes out and we have to list our carbon footprint. We have to list and show a model on how we're going to get to net zero, and at least by 2050 and 40% reduction by 2030. And these are real things for listed environments now.
So that 2030 is a nice overlap with our Harambe date. We're looking at 2030, and maybe to continue the conversation, Moses and I can there. So 2030 is a significant date, not just because we said, hey, let's take a 10-year view, but it's now got milestones. What do we think we can achieve by 2030? And let's maybe have a chat. What would need to be true for us to actually, as an industry, be able to deliver this? What are some of the key things that you see as needing to change? So I think maybe just to stimulate the conversation, there's been definitely talk about mandates, and there's pros and cons to that. We've spoken about education and awareness, which is something I think that the communities have been very involved with already. We're talking about the growth of technology and how the enabling technologies are now good enough for us to use. So that's no longer a barrier. Those thoughts and some other ones, maybe let's throw that around for a couple of minutes. What needs to be true for us to actually deliver this mature BIM, being able to do that on our continent, and essentially catch up with this mandate of protecting our environment, and having good, responsible design.
Okay, well, if I could just quickly give that a shot, I'd like to say, right, that beyond BIM practicing, right, or within the professionals or even clients out there, about policies, there's a reason why certain policies are able to work in certain regions. For example, we've all seen the UK demonstration of the benefits of BIM. We've seen the pilot projects, and we've seen the mandates. We've seen the level of BIM maturity over there, and it's beautiful. It's interesting. On continents like Africa, for example, I'll use my country for example. There's still a wide gap between policies and implementation and enforcement. So let's say we even get the government to put policies in place today now. Enforcement then becomes an issue. Getting compliance, full compliance to that also becomes a huge concern. So I think one thing that really has to be true by 2030 for us in Africa, right, for us to get where we really want to get, is our government coming to terms with the importance of these technologies, of these advancements, of these disruptions, right? Taking responsibility for this and being able to not just make policies or mandates, but as well back that up, right, with government power, resources to make this happen. A second aspect as well is Africa as a continent, right, being able to, demonstrate these values. It has to be tangible enough, right? Someone has to pay, right? So of course, there's a part of consultants, practitioners, built industry experts. There's that investment, so quote unquote, so to put it, investments that has to be in place. You don't make an investment today and expect to get your returns immediately, right? So there's that period of time from very basic things like developing your templates, you know, to maybe acquiring hardware that you need to keep updating. So there's still that aspect of investment from our side, and that has to be true. We have to come to terms to that. We can't keep clamoring for reduction, let's say maybe in solutions. If we have an issue with solutions available out there, then Africans need to probably sit up, reverse engineer or something, and begin to create solutions that are able to meet their requirements. For example, this has to be true as well. And that takes us back to digitalization. Digital is very, very key in this industry now. And we must rise up to such requirements. We must rise up to those challenges right now. So digital is very important, from infrastructure to the skill gap, you know, closing that skill gap. We just have to lead these conversations by doing, by practicing. I think these things really need to be true if we are going to be ready for 2030.
Yeah, I think if I can maybe just add to that, Kendi, I definitely agree with you. I think also another thing that we might need to look at is standardization, an agreed form of standardization across Africa. Do we conform to PAS 19650, or do we build on that? So once we have a standard that we want to, with going BIM, you know, if we have certain standards that we want to everyone to agree to, once that's in place, we can see how we're actually going to achieve that. So I think if we can have an agreed form of standardization, that would also assist us, because once you have the standard, you can train individuals to how to reach that standard, and then it is achievable.
I'm just seeing, Sylvia, thank you for contributing there. Just Sylvia's comment there saying, you know, it needs to be started at the client level. At BIM needs to be accepted and put in use at a government department level. And if it isn't, it's going to be a short-lived solution. And I think you're so right there. And your suggestion to maybe start by identifying the biggest property owners in Africa and present them with a simple or user-friendly BIM solution. Absolutely. And Giles, I think you guys are leading by example there. But I really think that is part of this, getting this right, is the storytelling. It's that ability to relate success and benefit from real examples. There's so much academic writing available, you know, case studies that have been written up from a theoretical point of view. And I think that really what the industry needs is to hear real life success stories and to see the stuff in practice. Giles, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Thanks for that comment. I think we have tried to set the bar. I think that's, you know, 15 years in the Middle East showed me there's different ways of doing things, and that's not what or how I was taught. You know, I've spent nearly 20 years between the Middle East and Australia, and I've seen a lot more than what I was ever taught here. And to a degree, no disrespect to the industry, where the industry is here relative to both Australasia and the Middle East. So I think your clients over there are a lot more opinionated and tech savvy. So insofar as they are driving the conversation around BIM, so the client is expecting it as part of his, when he's looking for a consultant, when he's looking to do a development, you know, BIM becomes one of the first topics of conversation, and it's integrated into the RFPs, into your consultant selection. The quality of your BIM operators become important, your design managers become important. But it's an A to Z conversation, because your client, your contractor, and your professionals are all on the same page. They're all designing and they're all using one common platform. I think at the moment that telephone line's broken in Africa, and we've got to get it fixed. So I know the conversation here is how do we do that, and I think we've come up with a number of ideas both on and offline. The group, us as a group, and you know, everything that's been said today resonates. I mean, how do we get the clients on board? I think we've got to lead by example. That's the first thing we're doing, and we see the benefits. So we do nothing but design and BIM. We have still got a bit of a headache because our ops teams are not that proficient, you know, so they get this model and now they don't quite know how to play with it. So that's another thing. So I think it comes back to Ana's conversation we had earlier, is that I don't think there's enough quality BIM operators that understand BIM, like you would use Microsoft Office as a tool. You know, I'm a property developer. We all come from different fields, but we use something called Microsoft and we can all use it. At the moment, I've got asset managers and facilities managers and property managers who are good at what they do because that's what they're being taught. But that BIM skill is not there. So they don't actually know how to actually interrogate and understand the documentation that's produced as built. And as I said, they still revert back to great BIM model, stick it on the server, fantastic. One day I'll learn how to do it, but just give me a set of PDFs in the meantime. So that's a challenge. And it's a challenge even for me as a business where we are designing a BIM. So very soon we're going to have a net zero building that's completely integrated with a BIM model. And my ops team, I can assure you, are going to ask me for PDFs. It's just the way it's going to be. So I think how do we spread the BIM knowledge, and being able to operate BIM is key. It shouldn't be seen as a specialty. It should be seen as a standard tool set amongst all built professional, all property professionals. So not the designers, property, from your asset managers. Just like you can open and use Microsoft. No one taught you how to use Outlook. You opened it and you learn, but we all use it. Yeah. I think BIM needs to be another one of those tools that we all are proficient in.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of brings us to a wrap up. And if I can maybe bring a couple of these thoughts together. Kahinda, you spoke about digitalization of operations. And maybe that really resounds in the space of digital transformation. Giles, being able to have a mindset, I guess, it's a cultural thing, to change an organizational mindset to say, we recognize that this is the way of the future. The examples that you put out there from sustainability point of view, from reporting, it's not an option, I think, for us. At this stage, we're on borrowed time. And as an industry, we have the technology at our disposal. It is no longer something that is exclusive to the North and the West, but this is something that has landed and has been on our continent for a long time now. And we've got excellent pockets of use. I agree that we've got to put a lot of effort as a broader community into having these conversations to share the information, and create that awareness amongst the professional teams that I think mostly have been looking at adoption. But as we were saying, the filling in the sandwich is the contractors, being able to bridge across from design into operations. So there's a lot of role players to still get on the bus, and I'm glad that the bus is moving, but I think the job is not yet finished. So maybe in random order, some closing thoughts. We'll do a quick round robin, and then it'll be the end of our hour. I can't believe the time has flown. But yeah, maybe some closing thoughts on the conversation we've had, and maybe some encouraging words to those who are going to be watching this. Moses, maybe if you would lead us on this one.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful time having various conversations from various people, and we're hoping that all of these would spur and motivate the industry to ensure that we improve in our personal practice, in our companies. We begin to influence our managers and leaders in our firms, and ensure that we all contribute to ensuring that we can achieve the dream of the level of BIM that we want to achieve in 2030. Yeah, it's been a fantastic time, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2020, reviewing the journey so far. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Thank you for my fellow panelists. Thank you for this conversation. I think just some thoughts from my side is, when you have ideas, reach out to your colleagues, reach out to your different organizations, whether it is SIA or whether it's SIC, reach out there. Guys, let's get together. Let's keep this momentum going. Let's keep these conversations going and see how we can assist each other to reach our BIM goals for 2030. Thank you so much, Richard.
Very well, Anne. Thanks, everyone. Once again, thanks for being a part of the week. Well, for me, I think I'd like to close with thoughts around awareness and influence. We need to keep the tide up. We need to keep influencing practice. We need to maintain standards. We just can't keep practicing haphazardly. We need to define standards and maintain them and let that drive outputs. There's really a lot to do, but one step at a time, again, we certainly will get there. That's that from me. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kendi. Yeah, some closing words from me. I think, despite the sort of, I wouldn't say negative tone, but the challenges that we face, I think it's inevitable that we're moving towards a smart and sustainable way of doing business. BIM again links those two. So I mean, I'm a specialist in smart and sustainable precincts. They have now become one and the same, and the common tool there again becomes BIM. So it's going to happen between the ESG challenges sitting at a macro level, the reporting requirements, the proliferation of the tool. I do think we need to expand the education of BIM to more than just designers. It has to be asset owners also need to think in BIM language and be able to understand the documents that are given to them at the end of the day as part of the as-built. And yeah, from a client's perspective, I think clients it will come. It's coming more. We would like to see it faster, but we are getting there. And I think it's through forums like this that we can continue to preach that, the evangelical word of BIM and why it actually is not just a design tool. This is a life cycle asset management tool. It has to be seen as that. It's not, and we've got to break away from BIM it's just designers and engineers and architects use it. No one else uses it. It is for the full asset life cycle. So thank you, Richard, for hosting this. Thanks everybody for the invitation. Good luck in all your endeavors in various parts of the continent, and look forward to catching up again sometime soon.
Super, Giles. Thank you very much. Panelists, thank you so much. This has been a really, really good conversation. And yeah, folks out there watching this, I really do hope that you have got some inspiration from this. And I think that there's work for all of us. This is a team effort, and I really look forward to seeing how we reach the maturity that we're hoping for on the continent. Thank you all very much for attending, and thank you very much for everyone's contribution to the week. It's been great. Have a fantastic day further. Bye-bye.